This video classroom lesson is sponsored by Transmission Bench. Visit the transmissionbench.com store for the Deluxe Super Kit, other parts, and even the video classroom lessons used during this project.
Hi, and welcome back. This is Project 4L60E Part 1, Lesson 5. We're almost finished with the valve body section disassembly. In our last lesson, we removed the valve body, 1 to 2 accumulator, and the separator plate. In this lesson, we'll remove the last 3 assemblies in this area. You'll need a 15mm wrench, 13mm socket, extension, ratchet, flat file, small and medium screwdrivers, and a 1 1/4 inch 12-point socket. We need to remove the 3/4 accumulator assembly, selector shaft assembly, and the wiring harness from the case. We'll begin with the 3/4 accumulator. There are 3 parts to this assembly: the spring, pin, and piston. Set the spring aside. You can easily remove the piston by pulling the pin up about 3/8 of an inch and rocking it side to side to work the piston up and out like this. Keep all 3 parts together as they were installed and place them on the bench. This is the selector shaft and parking pawl rod assembly. It must be removed in order to replace the seal located where the shaft goes through the case. Here's a closer view. The seal is a metal-clad type pressed into the case here. With the shaft removed, it can be pried out with a screwdriver later. First, remove the 2 13mm bolts holding the parking pawl bracket in place. Place the bolts and bracket with the small parts. Use a 15mm wrench and loosen the nut on the selector shaft. Finish backing off the nut and push the selector lever to the side. Use a screwdriver to pry out the spacer. Pull the shaft out enough to remove the nut, lever, and parking rod assembly. Put all of these pieces with the other small parts. Like the other end of the selector shaft, this area is also mushroomed. You must file the shaft in order to pull it out of its bore in the case. Use a flat file and work as you see here while turning the shaft. Now it easily slides out. If you don't file down the flared area and force the shaft out, the bore in the case will be enlarged and cause shaft side play. The seal will be removed and replaced during reassembly in Part 2 of the project. Put the shaft in the small parts box. The last step in this lesson and the final assembly to remove from the valve body area is the wiring harness. We need to remove the connector from the case. The connector was originally installed by pushing it through the case in this direction. Once in place, these barbs flare out to prevent it from being pushed out in the other direction. To get the connector out, lightly pull on the wiring harness while pushing on the barbs with a screwdriver. Gently push them in while keeping pressure on the wires. Alternate to each of the 4 barbs again and again until the connector is released and slides through the case. Place the harness on the bench. Another method to release the barbs is to use a 1 1/4 inch 12-point socket. Once again, pull on the harness with light pressure. Place the socket over the connector and push. This will force all 4 barbs in at the same time and allow you to pull the assembly out. This is the preferred way to avoid breaking fragile barbs that become brittle with age. Work as gently as possible. If the barbs break off, the connector cannot lock into position in the case and the entire wiring harness will have to be replaced. This completes our work in the valve body area. Meet me in lesson 6 and we'll begin disassembling the forward or pump and drum areas of the transmission.